We're starting today by acknowledging a truly profound loss for music and for culture across the world. The recent passing of an absolute titan, the Honorable Jimmy Cliff. Born James Chambers, this pioneering Jamaican musician, actor, and cultural activist, died on November 24th, 2025. He was 81.
And the reports we have confirm he was hospitalized after a seizure and ultimately succumbed to pneumonia. It's just a seismic loss.
It really is.
When you look at the history of world music, Jimmy Cliff isn't just, an important figure. He's foundational. His career is just astonishing. It spans 6 decades.
6 decades.
And his influence, it goes so far beyond just the music charts. It touches politics, film, social movements, everything.
And that's really our focus for this discussion. We want to take the source material you've provided and try to synthesize the vast and intricate tapestry of his life.
Right.
We're not just here to list dates. We want to map the journey of an artist who was so instrumental in defining and popularizing ska, rocksteady, and then, of course, reggae on an international stage.
And we have to cover his work in cinema. I mean, the harder they come is essential.
Absolutely essential. That and his incredible legacy of anthems that focused on protest and on peace.
And that's the mission, isn't it? To understand why his career path is just so critical to cultural history. He didn't just find a sound. He created the blueprint for how Jamaican music could transcend its origins and achieve real global stardom.
He really did. He became one of the world's most recognizable cultural ambassadors.
He paved the way. He really paved the way for every single international reggae star who came after him.
And to really frame the immense respect he had in his own country, we have to mention his highest national honor.
The OM.
Exactly. At the time of his death, Jimmy Cliff was the only living reggae musician to hold the Order of Merit. This is the highest honor the Jamaican government can give for achievements in arts and sciences.
And that distinction given to him by his own people, it just tells you everything you need to know about his stature. It speaks to the recognition of his efforts, not just as an entertainer, but as a voice. A chronicler of the Jamaican experience for the entire world.
So start at the beginning. Let's go back to his formative years, from his birth in 1944 up to those first international breakthroughs in the late 60s.
Okay.
He was born James Chambers on July 30th, 1944, in St. James, which was, of course, still the colony of Jamaica at the time. He was the second youngest of 9 children.
A large family. And his entry into music, it wasn't through formal training or anything like that. It was organic. It was community-driven.
Right.
His curiosity really started when he was in primary school, and it was fueled by listening to a neighbor's sound system.
And that context is so important, isn't it? The sound system culture.
It's vital. These mobile discos, they were the engine room of ska and rocksteady. They developed and spread the music across Jamaica. It was the crucial cultural driver that let young artists like Cliff hear and, internalize these new sounds.
It's just amazing to think that those early listening sessions sparked such ambition in him that he just started writing songs right away. And that drive, that early drive, is what got him out of St. James. When he was just 14, his father brought him to Kingston.
To the capital, the cultural crucible of the island.
And it was there that James Chambers officially adopted the stage name we all know, Jimmy Cliff.
That name change, it really symbolizes his dedication to being a performer. And in Kingston, he showed this incredible tenacity that, it defined his entire early career. He was still a schoolboy, but he was just relentless in seeking out producers.
He knew he needed to get the songs recorded.
Exactly. He understood that. And this search led him to a relationship that would define that first critical decade for him, Leslie Kong.
The story there is incredible. He convinced Kong, who at the time ran a record store and a restaurant.
Right. He wasn't even a producer yet.
No. Cliff convinced him to get into the recording business, starting with him. This wasn't just finding a producer. This was creating a partnership that helped launch the golden age of Jamaican music production.
It was. Kong took the leap, but it wasn't an instant success. Cliff talks about 2 initial singles that just didn't make much of an impression.
But then, in 1962, everything changed.
Everything. Cliff, at just 17 years old, releases Hurricane Hattie, and it becomes a hit. That was the moment his career really took off.
And that partnership with Kong was so deep, so exclusive. Cliff stayed with him, and only him, until Kong's sudden and tragic death in 1971.
A heart attack, so young. And during those 9 years, Cliff was right at the forefront of this incredible musical evolution happening in Jamaica.
He had a string of major local hits that really cemented his status there. He was moving from the fast pace of ska into the smoother rhythms of rocksteady.
Songs like King of Kings, Dearest Beverly, Miss Jamaica, Pride and Passion, they were staples. And they really showcase his rapid development as a songwriter and a vocalist.
He always had that distinct tenor voice, even as the music around him was changing so quickly.
Always.
His first steps onto the world stage also came surprisingly early. People often overlook this because of, the later explosion of Bob Marley. But in 1964, Cliff was chosen to represent Jamaica at the World's Fair in New York.
Which was a huge opportunity, a chance to present this emerging sound to a global cultural community.
It was very strategic.
It was. And that same year, he was featured in a promotional program called This Is Ska. He appeared alongside all the key figures of the new movement, Prince Buster, Toots, and the Maidles.
Byron Lee and the Dragonaires.
All of them. This established him very early on as a key figurehead, someone positioned to be the face of Jamaican music overseas.
And this international attention, it led directly to a pivotal move, signing with Island Records, led by Chris Blackwell, and relocating to the UK.
A massive move for a young Jamaican artist. But the initial strategy that Island Records used is really revealing about how people saw Jamaican music back then.
They tried to market him to the rock audience.
They did, and it was completely unsuccessful. They saw his talent, but they believed the only way to break him into the mainstream British market was to sort of package him in a more familiar, guitar-driven rock context.
Why do you think that strategy failed so badly? Was it just a complete misunderstanding of the sound?
I think it was a cultural misfire. Ska and rocksteady had this huge, immediate appeal to working-class youth in the UK, the mods, the skinheads later. But the mainstream rock world saw it as novelty music.
Right.
So by trying to package Cliff as a rock artist, Island basically alienated the Jamaican diaspora and the youth subcultures that were already embracing the authentic sound, but they didn't successfully break into the established rock scene.
It took him just being himself for his career to really take off.
Exactly. And that turning point came with the album Hard Road to Travel in 1967. It got great reviews, it showcased his songwriting, but it also had this fascinating international hit called Waterfall.
And Waterfall is a perfect example of how quickly he was absorbing different influences.
It is. The track was composed by two members of a UK psychedelic pop band, Nirvana.
Not that Nirvana.
No, not that Nirvana. And here's where his global reach starts to get interesting. The song became a huge hit, not in the UK or the US, but in Brazil. It won the International Song Festival there.
Which just shows his appeal was global from the start, resonating far outside that traditional Anglo-American music market. He was anticipating the world music genre he would later help define. So moving from those foundational years into his era of, let's call it, global awakening, we're looking at the period between 1969 and 1972, a time dominated by powerful protest songs, his own personal struggles, and a cinematic revolution.
This is really when he found his voice as a global commentator. The late 60s saw him release these tracks that just resonated with powerful social and political messages.
Wonderful World, Beautiful People in 69. It charted in both the UK and the US, bringing his sound to massive new audiences.
And then the big one, Vietnam in 1970.
An undeniable international hit. But its significance isn't really in its sales figures, it's in its cultural weight. And that's best illustrated by the endorsement it got from the master of the genre himself.
Bob Dylan, absolutely. Bob Dylan called Vietnam the best protest song he had ever heard.
That's an extraordinary statement. Let's pause on that, because why? What made it so powerful for Dylan?
Well, Dylan's protest songs, from that folk tradition, they rely on these poetic, often wordy narratives over sparse acoustic music. Cliff's approach, using that emerging reggae rhythm, was different.
It was physical.
It was physical. It used a driving, hypnotic rhythm that made the protest infectious, not just an intellectual challenge. The contrast between that urgent rhythm and the profound sadness in the lyrics about the war's futility, it was uniquely compelling. A universal, mournful dance.
It's the difference between a song that makes you think and a song that makes you move and think at the same time.
Reggae.
He delivered the tragedy with that gentle, soulful tenor, which made the critique all the more palatable and pervasive.
And while he's singing about these global conflicts, he's also documenting his own internal battles inside the music industry. In 1969, he releases the deeply personal, enduring track, Many Rivers to Cross.
A song that explicitly addresses his struggles. The exhaustion, the frustration, the feeling of being exploited, of constantly fighting an uphill battle in a really unforgiving business.
And that universal theme of perseverance is why that song has endured as a classic ballad. You mentioned Cher and UB40, but John Lennon also covered it.
Which is incredible.
It is. The song just transcended genre. It became this powerful expression of existential struggle.
And all of this artistic momentum, it culminates in one single, seismic event that just fundamentally changed the trajectory of reggae music globally. The film, The Harder They Come in 1972.
This is the inflection point for his career and for the entire genre.
It truly is. Directed by Perry Hensel, Cliff takes a starring role as Vincent Ivanhoe Martin,
a character based on the real-life Jamaican anti-hero, Reggae, who became this sort of folk legend. And the story is crucial. A young, ambitious man comes to Kingston from the country, trying to make it in the music industry. He fails, he's exploited, and he turns to a life of crime.
The cultural significance of this film, you just can't overstate it. It wasn't just a movie. It was a gritty, authentic mirror held up to post-independence Jamaica. It showed the complexities of poverty, ambition, the harsh realities of the music business.
And it remains one of the most important internationally recognized films to ever come out of independent Jamaica.
The reception proves it. It broke box office records right there in Kingston. And its global debut in London at the Gaumont Cinema on September 1st, 1972, that was a symbolic moment.
It was, but while the film itself was groundbreaking, it was the soundtrack that was the real cultural Trojan horse. It brought reggae to an international audience for the first time, really, outside of small, dedicated subcultures.
The sources all confirm the soundtrack was a huge success that sold well around the world. Let's analyze the genius of that move, because before this, most international audiences had, at best, a passing knowledge of the Jamaican sound.
The soundtrack packaged it. It packaged the sound as a vibrant, marketable, globally relevant genre. It democratized reggae.
It gave it a context.
Exactly. A visual narrative of struggle, aspiration, rebellion. When people heard tracks like The Harder They Come or Many Rivers to Cross, they weren't just hearing a beat. They were hearing the score to this gripping, modern crime tragedy.
And Cliff's performance was key. The Grammy Awards later described it as riveting and authentic.
And noted that the film's realism came partly from experiences Cliff had personally witnessed in Kingston.
It legitimized the sound. To underscore its lasting value, the U.S. Library of Congress added The Harder They Come soundtrack to the National Recording Registry in 2020. That confirms its status not just as popular music, but as an essential piece of cultural heritage.
Okay, so as we shift into the mid-70s and beyond, the next couple of decades, we see Cliff navigating a period of tremendous personal evolution, deep philosophical shifts, and some really diverse musical partnerships.
Right. After the film's success, his profile in American media starts to climb. He makes a notable appearance on the first season of Saturday Night Live in 1976.
Episode 12, hosted by Dick Cavett.
That put him right in front of a crucial, influential American audience. He was moving beyond art house cinema and into mainstream television.
This period is also defined by a fascinating spiritual search. Cliff was initially a dedicated member of the Rastafari movement, but his world travels, especially a trip to Africa, led him to explore other faiths.
And this led to his conversion to Islam, where he adopted the name El Hajj Naim Bashir.
A fundamental shift in identity. But what's so characteristic of Cliff is his constant questioning. Even that conversion was, a waypoint, not a final destination.
Right. In a 2021 interview, he denied that his conversion to Islam fully satisfied him. He said it didn't satisfy my soul.
He clarified that he moved away from dogma, describing himself later in life as having a universal outlook, and famously declared, "Now I believe in science."
That whole trajectory from Rastafari to Islam to a universal scientific perspective, it's so telling. It shows an artist who refused to be confined by any single structure, which mirrors his musical refusal to stick to just one genre.
Absolutely. His intellectual independence feeds right into his approach to social commentary.
And musically, this era was all about collaboration. He recorded with the major R&B funk band, Kool and the Gang, after touring with them in the early 80s.
A great crossover. It showed his adaptability, proved his soulful tenor could fit right into those sophisticated funk arrangements.
But maybe the most surprising visibility boost in the mid-80s came from the rock world. It came from Bruce Springsteen.
It did. During the River Tour, Springsteen decided to add a previously little-known Jimmy Cliff song, Trapped, into his live set.
And that just catapulted the song onto a global stage, especially when Springsteen's version was included on the 1985 We Are the World benefit album.
a massive endorsement. It introduced Cliff's deep catalog to a huge American rock and pop audience who might not have sought out reggae before.
That momentum led directly to a major career high point in 1985, the album Cliffhanger.
A commercial and critical success. It won him his first Grammy Award for Best Reggae Album, and that win was so important because it was his first significant success in the U.S. mainstream since the early 70s.
And his dedication to his core values, to protest and social justice, it remains strong. In 1985, he lent his voice to Stephen Van Zant's Sun City Project.
The massive collaborative anthem against South African apartheid, his reach across genres was just astounding. A year later, 1986, he's providing backing vocals on the Rolling Stones album Dirty Work.
That places him firmly in that rock royalty sphere, not just as a visitor, but as a respected peer. And his presence in film was still a constant engine for his music. In 1986, he appeared in the comedy club Paradise with Robin Williams and Peter O'Toole.
And the soundtrack was a platform for his new material, including 7-Day Weekend, which was a fascinating collaboration with Elvis Costello.
It just highlights his comfort working across these drastically different musical idioms.
And he kept integrating his music into major films, Shelter of Your Love, in the Tom Cruise movie Cocktail, and then appearing live with his band in the action film Marked for Death.
Before we get to his big commercial moment in the 90s, let's just touch again on the political use of his music.
Right. You can get it if you really want.
The Sandinista National Liberation Front used it in their 1990 election campaign in Nicaragua, an anthem of determination adopted by a revolutionary movement.
And then, less than 20 years later, the same song is adopted by the British Conservative Party.
This duality is one of the most remarkable things about his career. It speaks to the universal, nonpartisan nature of his lyrics.
It allowed him to transcend ideology. He wasn't giving specific instructions. He was providing a mantra of hope and ambition, and that's what sets the stage for his major commercial comeback in 1993, driven once again by the box office.
The movie was Cool Runnings, and the song was his huge cover of Johnny Nash's I Can See Clearly Now.
Sync licensing genius, a perfect fit for the movie's optimistic underdog spirit.
And the single was a massive multi-continental hit. Number 1 in France, number 23 in the UK, and number 18 on the US pop charts. It launched him back into the American mainstream in a way he hadn't experienced since the 70s.
And that soundtrack work continued with an even bigger commercial force, Disney.
1995, Hakuna Matata, a collaboration with Lebo M from the Lion King soundtrack.
A different kind of cultural ambassadorship, fusing African rhythms and his signature sound for a whole new generation. And that single was also a huge hit, especially in Europe.
So we move now into the final chapters of his life, his later works, the honors he accumulated, and his last years from 2000 through 2025.
By the turn of the millennium, Cliff was actively looking to support the next generation of independent artists.
In 2001, he became an inaugural judge for the Independent Music Awards. Having struggled against major labels himself, this role allowed him to nurture talent outside that system.
Creatively, this was a period of really interesting experimentation. His 2002 album in Europe, Fantastic Plastic People, was a melting pot of collaborations with people like Joe Strummer, Annie Lennox, and Sting.
And he was technologically forward-thinking. He was providing free downloads of the album using peer-to-peer software, really challenging the traditional industry models.
But he wasn't satisfied with that initial version. For the 2004 album Black Magic, he completely reworked the songs. This shows his perfectionism, and the stylistic changes were significant.
They were. He moved away from traditional reggae arrangements in favor of a more electronic sound. The sources note he was integrating specific electronic elements, creating a sound that was less roots and more global pop.
And his lifetime of contribution was formally recognized at home in 2003. The Jamaican government awarded him the Order of Merit, the nation's fourth highest honor at the time, for his contributions to both film and music.
And let's revisit that unique theme of political appropriation one last time, because it highlights his unwavering neutrality. In 2007, You Can Get It If You Really Want was adopted by the British Conservative Party.
Which, after the Sandinistas' use of the same song, forced him to clarify his position. And he did, with remarkable impartiality.
In The Independent, he said, and I'm quoting, "I can't stop them using the song, but I'm not a supporter of politics. I don't support any politician. I just believe in right or wrong."
And that quote is so critical to understanding his legacy. He was a moral artist, not a political one. By deliberately avoiding partisan endorsements, he made sure his music remained universally accessible.
His status as a global music legend was officially confirmed in 2010 when he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He was inducted by Wyclef Jean.
The significance there is enormous. He's one of only 2 Jamaican artists in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The other is Bob Marley.
It confirms his status, not just as a reggae pioneer, but as a foundational contributor to all of modern popular music.
Yeah.
And his response to this huge honor was so modest. He said, "This is good for Cliff, good for Jamaican music, and good for my country." He immediately linked his personal achievement back to his cultural origins.
And the period right after that brought this powerful late-career artistic resurgence thanks to another fascinating collaboration. He started working with Tim Armstrong.
From the American punk band, Rancid.
It seems counterintuitive, punk rock grit and reggae soul, but it was incredibly fruitful. It started with the 2011 EP, The Sacred Fire, and then the full album Rebirth in 2012.
And Armstrong did something brilliant. He stripped away some of the slicker production of the 80s and 90s and let Cliff's powerful, soulful tenor shine against these grittier, raw arrangements that channeled the energy of his early rocksteady days.
The album was a huge critical and commercial success. It earned him his 2nd Grammy for Best Reggae Album.
And Rolling Stone magazine loved it, listing it at number 12 on their top 50 albums of 2012.
They specifically praised his soulful tenor, and they highlighted one track in particular, his revelatory cover of The Clash's Guns of Brixton.
That cover connected the political alienation in the Clash's song right back to the social critique inherent in reggae.
He closed out 2012 by being named Caribbean Journal's Artist of the Year, and he remained creatively active right until the end, releasing his final album, Refugees, in August 2022.
We now conclude by reflecting on his enduring legacy and his passing on November 24, 2025. The outpouring of grief really reflected his monumental status.
He's celebrated as one of Jamaica's most important musical figures. His legacy is profound because his early work created the international market for Jamaican music. For a crucial period, he was sometimes seen as rivaling Bob Marley, largely because of the visibility from The Harder They Come.
The cultural synthesis he achieved is what defines him. David Katz of The Guardian described him perfectly as an itinerant ambassador who introduced the music and culture of his island to audiences across the globe.
Tireless, committed, and innovative.
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame website offers the most succinct summary. It calls him simply reggae's first champion. It was his early success, propelled by those powerful tracks and that seminal film, that created the pathways for the genre's worldwide acceptance.
So, to summarize his formal accolades for you, 7 Grammy nominations, winning Best Reggae Album twice. And most importantly, the Jamaican Order of Merit, the country's highest honor for the arts.
The official tributes after his death acknowledged this. Prime Minister Andrew Holness issued a statement confirming that Jimmy Cliff's music lifted people through hard times, inspired generations, and helped to shape the global respect that Jamaica enjoys today.
His legacy is sealed. Music, film, and activism.
Before we close, we want to leave you with a fascinating thought to consider as you reflect on his amazing career. We talked about his global impact, but if you actually dig into the chart data, you uncover this remarkable pattern of, well, disparate international success that shifted dramatically over the decades.
Right. If you compare the chart performance of an early hit like Wonderful World, Beautiful People, which was a success on both sides of the Atlantic, US number 25, UK number 6.
The balanced hit.
A balanced hit. If you compare that against some of his later hits, like Reggae Night from 1983, you see how deeply his popularity was entrenched in certain continental European markets.
Because Reggae Night only reached number 91 in the US, his mainstream American momentum had slowed by then.
But at the same time, it was a massive, enduring smash in Europe. Number 2 in France, number 6 in the Netherlands, even number 1 in New Zealand.
So investigating that specific disparity really illustrates how Jimmy Cliff maintained this huge, dedicated following in continental Europe and Australasia, even during periods when his momentum in the traditional UK and US markets would ebb and flow.
His sustained popularity across such different cultures, evidenced by those charting shifts, it just confirms his status as a truly universal, long-distance runner of popular music.
It has been a true honor to discuss the extraordinary life, art, and legacy of Jimmy Cliff.
A voice of hope and perseverance that will resonate for countless generations.
Thanks for listening.